What about when your Christian life, your work for God, even your heartfelt worship of God doesn't change you in the ways that you need to be changed? I'm Dr. Carol, and thank you for joining me on this episode. It's kind of like what Paul said. I do what I don't want to do, and I find myself not doing what I really want to do. Just more Bible study or prayer, sometimes that doesn't cut it. What about when that specifically deals with sexual addiction, betrayal, all of that? A wonderful couple to have a conversation with today, Greg and Stacey Oliver. They've lived it. I will let them tell you their story. But especially what we talked about in this episode is how years of knowing Jesus, you can still have stuff. And what's missing? How do you deal with that? What do you do about it? Sexual addiction and betrayal is a key part of their story. Greg and Stacey now, for a number of years, have been helping others find wholeness and freedom and healing and goodness who have been through similar stuff. They founded Awaken Recovery, back in 2015, helping men, women, and couples who are struggling with sexual addiction or sexual betrayal through information, through community. And that's a key part of what is necessary here, and resources for other helpers in the body of Christ in helping people with this area. I was totally thrilled to have this conversation. I met Greg and Stacey just as we're recording right now, just a matter of days ago at the American Association of Christian Counselors meeting. They have so much to offer. I think you will be delighted with this conversation. Greg and Stacey, thank you. We're relatively new friends, but there's a certain sense in which I feel like we've all known each other for a long time. I'm just really thrilled to have this conversation.
So are we.
Yeah, it was cool. I don't know if you will have already said something about this in the intro, but we met at the AACC conference in Nashville, and just some people come up to a booth and you know immediately that there's a lot of alignment, and that's definitely how we felt talking to you.
Well, I felt the same, just so much. And one of the things I so appreciate, just from the conversations we've already had and from looking at some of your material, is you guys don't try and hide. I mean, it's just real. You're chuckling. Hiding doesn't get you very far, does it?
It does not. It does not.
I have plenty of experience with hiding, and I'm not a fan of it anymore.
Well, let's go there for a minute. What did that look like for you guys? I always love to hear a bit of people's story, and I know just a little bit, but for our listeners, how did you come to where you are and not being a fan of hiding?
Yeah. Well, so I would say that for more than 25 years of my life, I kept secrets about sexual things. And I wouldn't say that all of those 25 plus years I was a sex addict, because it's something that develops, with escalation over time. But really going back into adolescence, puberty, just feeling like some of the things that I've now come to understand are so normal in the sexual development experience of young people, but I didn't have a place where I could talk or ask questions. And so I just started, keeping secrets about it. And that lasted. And I kept thinking, next stage of life, it's going to get easier. It's going to get better. And, the thing about life is it tends to get harder. And I held the same fallacy in my thinking about what marriage was going to do to my compulsive sexual struggles, that it was going to be the cure, because I thought my problem was lack of good, God-honoring outlet for sex. But that was not the problem. It was something much deeper than that I hadn't gotten in touch with yet. And so when we got married, Stacey and I met at Bible college in the late 80s. It was, I think, fall of 1989. We got married at the beginning of 1992 and immediately found that being able to have sex didn't fix anything. If anything, it just, bubbled more things up. And so because I had expected that so much and was disappointed, not in Stacey, but just disappointed in the situation,
Yeah.
I just kind of went right back to the strategies that I'd been using to try to, self-regulate and meet my own needs for so long. It was a well-worn path. And so it wasn't hard at all for my brain to go back there. And I think probably my brain would have gone back there anyway, even if sex had been the way that we hoped it was from the get-go, just because I was already sort of functioning in an addictive way when it came to sex. And so because of that, I had never experienced what it was like to be able to talk to somebody about my struggles. And so why start now? Now I have one more person to hide it from, my wife. And that's what I did. And so for the next 17 years, that was the path that I was on, of hiding and lying. And the lies got worse because the behaviors got worse and, escalated into a full-blown sexual addiction. And all the time while we were raising a family and I was in pastoral ministry as a worship pastor, it was miserable. And it was living two lives. And that went on until early 2009 when the Lord exposed my addiction. And, a lot of stuff blew up. And yet at the same time, a recovery path started. So I'll pause there and
My
let
side
you.
of the street
Yeah,
while all that was going on. I met him at Bible college. I had grown up in Africa, West Africa. My parents were missionaries, so MK. And not at all legalistic. I had all the legalism. And, you do the right thing. You have all these things that you do or don't do to make you a better Christian. And I was on my way to make that happen. We got married, got into full-time Christian, ministry, and it felt like normal, it just felt like what we were supposed to do. And I would say, I knew nothing of this struggle. But I knew that things could be better. Like, it was more like, well, we're just really good friends. And is this it, like with marriage, and we have always gotten along really well. When we fight loud, and we're both reactors. And he uses more how would you say your way of
Well, I lawyer you to the brink of going off the deep end.
And then I go off the deep end and I just call him names, not nice names.
And all of this, not so much lately.
No. This is all pre. Like you said, we had our kids and, doing the church ministry thing. And there was a lot of good, a lot of good there. But for me, I would say the majority of the way I functioned was doing things to help other people to get value.
Yeah.
Because I just wasn't secure in myself in any ways. I was really determined to be a good mom to my kids. And that showed up unhealthily, not all unhealthy, but one area was like, make them be good, make them, whatever, so that I look like a good mom. And so yes. We've done a lot of repair with our kids over the years, thankfully, but that's one of the things that just makes me sad. I just couldn't let them be and had to make them toe the line or whatever. But yeah, I think, like I said, there was a lot of good, but for me, it was exhausting. I knew I was exhausted, but I didn't know why. I'm like, I'm doing all these things. I'm helping people. I'm being so nice and everybody likes me.
Yes.
But I was just miserable internally. And I would tell him, I have a lot of friends and I'm so lonely. And I was pretty open. I mean, I'm not terribly different than pre all this, but I would say the confidence wasn't there. Like, there was just always feeling less than. And so there were a couple of times over the years that I saw something weird, nothing like pornography or anything to make me really question, but I'd ask a question and he would give me whatever answer, and I would buy it and we would go on. So in 2009 we had our 17th anniversary, which so many people that I talk to, it's a birthday or her birthday
Or Valentine's Day.
And I'm like, why does it have to be around a holiday? But if you take out all the holidays, I mean,
Right.
so anyway, yeah, we had our 17th anniversary. It was after a big Christmas thing at church. It was wonderful. I would have never in a million years told you Greg was in a bad place. Did not have a clue. Now, all the years leading up to that, there, I would say what I experienced was him getting, well, you said it's okay not to be totally always not saying any bad words, but like pissy was a word that I use. It's just like he would do great at church and worship and all of that, and then come home and not have a whole lot left for us. So harsh with the kids, and just agitated easily and all of that. But gosh, I would have never guessed how bad things had been for him for the past however many years. So yeah, that was about where, I don't know if that sounds like a terrible life or not, but there was, I keep saying there was a lot of good in there, and we had a lot of, good times, and this was also going on. So
Yeah. What happened? Things got exposed. The mask came down, to whatever degree you want. What
Yeah.
happened? How did all this fall apart?
So what happened was, generally speaking, any kind of addiction, to sustain it, it's got to escalate
Yes.
because you're trying to use a process or a substance to meet a need that it wasn't created to meet.
Yep.
And it starts out feeling like it's meeting that need, but then you got the law of diminishing returns. And so with an alcoholic, you got to drink more to feel the same escape. Same with a sex addict. And I had escalated to just random sexual hookups with strangers. And I mean, it was really dark. And I had this fake email account using a fake name that I would use to make connections. And I did that, and I made a mistake that I was way too clever to make in covering my tracks. And I'm convinced that it was God that made it happen, because I sent an email to a person, and it was from my church email account and not the one that I'd created. And so because of that, information got sent back to the leaders of the church, and, the jig was up. And so once the jig was up, I got confronted, and I, for about a week, tried to control the damage, admit to some things and not other things, and lost my job. And, that was appropriate. The extent to which my addiction had gone, it was appropriate. The chance of me being able to maintain that leadership role in my church was pretty much torched.
Yeah.
And yet, in the aftermath, they didn't really know what to do with me or us, because we knew that, like, the ship had sailed about being on staff, but we wanted to stay at the church because we'd been there for more than a decade. A couple of our kids had been born while we were there. We had community, and they kind of just didn't really know how to make that work with so much that had happened. And so it became obvious within a few months that was not going to be possible, sadly. And, unfortunately, a lot of churches just didn't know what to do with people, much less staff people, who had compulsive or addictive sexual stuff blow up. And so the easiest thing is when the people just go away, they just go somewhere else. And I don't think anybody wanted that, but didn't really know how to do anything but that. And so that was really sad. And yet, at the same time, having that distance over time proved itself to be what we needed. I mean, we needed to be somewhere else so that I wasn't trying to constantly just be proving myself, proving that I was legit. I just needed to know and be confident in myself and in the relationships that were sustaining and that mattered. So what happened after that is, really from the get-go, is immediately we got connected with an amazing therapist who understood sexual addiction, had certification in that area, was able to help us to make a lot of sense out of my story and our story together. And I was recovering, and I was getting better, and we were healing and just discovering this intimacy in our relationship that we had always wanted but never had had. And so, we were 17 years late to that party, but better late than never, so we started having the kind of marriage that we'd heard other people talking about, which was great. Not devoid of pain. There was a lot of hurt and tears and anger and names.
Not cussed much, missionary kid, worship pastor's wife. And I found probably not all of them, but I feel like I found all of them. And I called him all of them all the time. I was so angry. It was so hard. I mean,
but not angry all the time.
Not anger all the time, which was,
it's
fun for you, right?
Well, we may talk about this more, but just the PTSD of sexual betrayal, I was watching happening in front of me. And she would go back and forth between screaming at me, pounding on my chest, calling me names, and then wanting to have sex. And I just get out of my face, and I don't want you to go anywhere. And I just felt like I was getting whiplash, and internally, so did she, because it was very much post-traumatic stress. And so we were learning a lot about that as well.
Yeah. There was a group he started going to right away. Our therapist told us about a group he could attend, and he started going, and I knew he needed to do that. And it made me so mad. Like, you're leaving me with these kids. And, but that was the thing. I tell people all the time, like, it's like you're seeing them, if they're doing the things that you would want them to do, you're still going to be mad, because it's just, you don't want the thing to have ever happened, and you just can't make that happen. But I would say in our therapy, so back to 2009, we saw our therapist together. I know I don't know if it's fair to say most, but many don't do that, but we did. And it was great. She was amazing. She is amazing. And she encouraged me gently along the way to maybe reach out to this person, because she understands, she's been through it. And I'm like, no way. I'm not talking to sex addict's wife. This isn't my life. This is not going to be my life. We're going to go back to some other job, and we'll be fine. We'll tell this redemption story, and then we'll go on our way. And God was like, oh, darling, you're so sweet.
Bless your heart.
You're so cute. So anyway, I was like, literally, F it is what I said. You can edit that out if you need to. I'll call her, whatever. I was not in a good mood about that, but I did call her, and actually it changed everything. Because, for some people, if they hear the codependent word, they're like, oh no. Yeah. And that was a term I got introduced to. And it actually, for me, it wasn't about, this is, he did this and you did this and you're equally whatever. It wasn't about that. But for me, it was like, oh my gosh, I actually get to say no to people when they ask me to do something. And I can say no, even if I don't have anything on my calendar. I just don't want to. That is not a way. I don't know that anybody intentionally taught me that I always have to say yes, but that's what I grew up believing. As a believer, you serve all the time, and so that stuff like that, like, oh, I can say no, or doing all these things just to get people to like me, like, that's actually not living authentically, and so that really helped me. Now I would be excited and have these aha moments, and then I'd be like, I can't believe you, blah, 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 and it would all over again. So it was a roller coaster, easily a first year. Yeah. And then on into those 3 to 5 years that all the therapists say that we hate. It has been a journey, but yeah, that was getting some help from me separate from him was so needed.
Right.
I think we could spend probably 5 hours talking through the stuff you guys have already said.
True.
But one of the things that at least has a little bit of uniqueness in your story that I want to drill down on is you both had been following Jesus. You met in Bible college. You were worship pastors. It wasn't like, you were, sinners found Jesus, everything changed, on a dime. Yeah. Frankly, I don't know that happens nearly as often as people say. But what was it? Just talk a bit about that. You were truly, honestly worshiping Jesus, serving him. You met and, connected with the purpose of building your life on serving Jesus. And this was still there for both of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to go first?
Yeah. So I think, again, I keep saying this, there's so much good, and there's a solid foundation that I had growing up. Yes. Solid foundation, which I think is why I'm here today. Now,
Sure.
other people have a solid foundation and their marriage may not survive. So I'm not saying that if your marriage doesn't survive, you didn't have a solid biblical foundation, but that is what one thing that was so good for me, because I know in this the day he told me the little bit that he told me, I remember that was the first time in my whole life. Was it 36?
You were 37.
37.
I was 38.
That I had like, I actually don't know if everything I've been taught's true
Yes.
or if it's all like,
Yes.
because this is not what I have been taught
Yes.
would happen with the way I've lived my life. I'm not perfect, but like I've pretty much been really good. And thought I would get, if I was good, I would get this kind of life. And this did not add up. So I really did like in a few minutes, I was by myself and he was meeting with some pastors. It was like, okay, God, you're either real and everything's true. And here's where, I mean, this is my trial, or it's all just a lie and I'm just going to walk away. Well, there was no way I was walking away. I had nothing. I didn't have any degree or training in anything. I was mom and his wife. That was it, is what the way I saw it. So I said, I'm going to see what you have, God. And I think for me, it was just the beginning of a journey of just realizing that it's not about what I do. I don't have to do the things to be good, to be a good Christian. Believe is what I'm supposed to do, just believe and trust me. And he shows me what to do. And so I think that was the thing. Like I lived this way and then I got the story anyway, the story that I thought I would never have. We would never be that couple. And here we were. And so I think one thing that has been so freeing for me is like, we joke about my mouth and how I don't hide. I just say it. And not everybody appreciates that. So if I say some things and somebody doesn't like it, I may never hear from them again. But I'm learning to be okay with that. Like, it's okay. I have a few people who I believe will never turn their backs on me, and nor I will on them. And I don't need all the people to approve of me. I just don't. Now I'm careful with my language, or, I want to honor God with the way that I am, the way I show up. But when I'm talking
When you're with other people,
when I'm with women who are going through this and I drop an F-bomb because I'm just sharing how it was for me, they start crying because they're like, oh, I feel that, but I don't think I can say that. I'll make his shame worse. And I'm like, okay, he gets to go deal with that.
Right.
You are finding out all these things. You get to have some anger. God is not okay with this that has been going on. So you don't have to be okay with it and forgive quickly, So anyway, that's a long answer to your question.
Yeah.
For
Well,
me.
to the way that I would answer it, Carol, is just growing up as I became a Christian when I was 6 years old. I'm 55 now. And so I don't remember really much of any life where I wasn't in relationship with Jesus. And there are people that I've heard plenty before and since I've been in recovery who would say, no, I mean, sexual addiction, like that can't be present in a true believer's life.
Yep.
And they're wrong. Because I knew all along, because I knew how badly I felt about what I was doing. And it wasn't just general conscience. I think it was the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
I desired deeply to stop. It wasn't something that I was doing because I wanted to do it. After a point, because there's a point before you recognize the damage and the stakes and the fact that it's gotten out of control, that there's still some like, hey, this is fun, getting away with something. But that goes away with people who experience true debilitating, crippling addiction. Like they're not living their best life, and nor was I. And so, and I knew one thing about me is I've always, even though I grew up in a pretty rigid spiritual environment, the kind of church that we went to, there was a lot of legalism there. And just a lot of concreteness in the approach to everything. I still had this about me where I would say, I don't think that's right. Like I would just see that
Yes.
internally. And I
Yes.
felt like the Holy Spirit would point out things where legalism was drawing a conclusion that didn't feel like Jesus to me. And so even like in the midst of all this, I knew that this is not what I really wanted out of life. And when I was leading worship, it was real. I wasn't faking that,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And I had a talk with actually the person who was the pastor of the church that I got fired from, early in the process, talking about how I felt like such a hypocrite. And to his credit and accuracy, he says, it seems to me like those times when you were out acting out, that's when you were being the hypocrite, because that wasn't you being your true self. And he was right. And so there was a lot of just very confusing, duplicitous living. And when I was acting out, it was because this strategy that I had developed to try to get a deeper need met,
Yep.
a deeper need that I had not identified what it was, it had stopped working. But by the time it stopped working, it had also taken control over certain parts of my neurochemistry and how my body was functioning. So I was literally physiologically addicted now to this process.
Yeah.
And so no matter how much I wanted out, it was never going to change as long as I was trying to manage it on my own. I was going to have to get caught or ask for help. And I knew I was never going to ask for help because that was too terrifying. And so I knew that this is either going to kill me or it's going to blow up my life when I get caught one of these days. And so then it was just try to keep that from happening as long as possible. It was a
Yeah.
miserable way to live,
Yes.
knowing that that wasn't the way I was meant to live. And so when I got caught in '09, it was the worst thing, but also the greatest blessing all at the same time. It was very confusing, but more than anything else, almost immediately what I felt first and foremost was freedom.
Mm. Mm. Wow.
And that was hard too, feeling free while she was feeling like this truck full of manure had been backed up and emptied right on top of her, because both were true,
Yes.
I was
Yes.
sarcastic about that too. Like, I'm so happy for you that you feel so free.
Yeah.
You know?
That is a dynamic I hear not infrequently, that if
Yeah.
one spouse is living a hidden life, and it finally comes to light, either a forced disclosure or a planned disclosure or whatever, they feel lighter. The burden is off of
Yeah.
them and their spouse that now just got dumped on.
Yeah.
Now they're the one who's now traumatized, and they feel
Right.
worse, sometimes a lot worse for a while.
Yes.
That's right.
Tell you what, though, one thing I did not know, I did not have any clue that this would have been going on,
Yeah.
but there was a lot of, what would you say, relief or validation that, I was not crazy. I knew there was something.
Well, your gut was telling you that something was up even before you had any idea what it was.
It's true. I called you many different times. You said when he either had just acted out or was going to act out or whatever. And I would call very concerned that something was wrong.
Yeah.
And that had to be the Holy Spirit because I had no box for this stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, it was,
And in those moments, like I wanted so bad to just spill it.
yeah.
But there was terror,
Yeah.
there's fear.
Well,
And
one thing that I think that plays into that, and I'm not taking responsibility for you not telling me, but another aspect of me was all this that I did with other people and getting value from them. I put the same pressure on him because
Yes.
I just didn't have agency for myself. I just didn't. If anything was ever wrong, I probably prayed fast and then I would call him because he could real quick fix it. Whatever that looked like. And so I feel like pretty early on for myself when this happened, I think probably I thought, well, you deserve this because of all this that you made him an idol,
Yeah.
and I don't think that that's how God works, but
Right.
I did wake up to, okay, he's been convicting me for a long time. And I realized my hero, I think it was Hope After Betrayal. Maybe there's a poem in there that she wrote about her knight in shining armor falling off the horse or something. And that resonated with me so much.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that was a dynamic that was going on as well that we have I'm continuing to work on to this day. He's very good at doing things. And so he's like great help.
Yeah. Riding that white stallion again. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The Christian part of this, the relationship with Jesus part of this,
Mhm.
and all. And you've alluded to this, but I want to ask it in this way. If trying harder, if praying more, if serving God more, if hanging around church people more doesn't work, any thoughts about why it doesn't work and what's the shift in
Mm,
what does work?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that what do we mean when we say it works or it doesn't work? Because I think it's not that I don't want to pray. It's not
Yes,
that I don't want to try. It's not that I
right,
don't have a responsibility to show up and do what is my
right.
responsibility to do. It's really my relationship with the doing that
mhm,
is key for me.
mhm,
Am I a human being or a human doing?
Mhm.
And if I can say that I believe that whether or not I do the things right or do the things enough, that I am going to still have my full value and be fully loved and fully accepted as I am by God, then the doing will never work because the doing is trying to accomplish something that's already been accomplished by somebody else. You know,
mm,
when I'm trying to do the things right and do the right things to make myself acceptable to God, I'm basically telling Jesus that what he did was insufficient and that I'm so bad that what you
mm,
did on the cross wasn't good enough for me. You know,
Yeah.
and that's it. It
mhm,
sounds like shame, and it is, but it really it's kind of a reverse pride. It's like, oh,
mhm,
let me tell you how bad I am. I'm like
mhm.
the gold medal winner of badness. You know, and so if I can really believe, if I never get this right, and if I never do all the right things, God, you will still love me exactly the same.
Yep.
Then I'm going to be able to do those things without
Yep.
the pressure of creating the outcome. And I can do it out of love and not out of fear or obligation. And I can do it out of authenticity and genuineness. And I can tell you, I mean, the things that I do or don't do that affect Stacey, I feel like you can tell the difference when my heart is in it or when it's not, you
Mhm,
know?
mhm,
And so there's just a freedom, you know, like, does doing the right thing work? Well, sure, it always works when it comes to creating or preventing consequences. But as far as like, if I'm looking for my behavior to work in terms of how I feel secure in my life, I'm I'm putting that job description with the wrong person's name on it.
That's
And
good.
so it's not stopping all this and do all this. It's like, what am I doing and changing my relationship with it that has been so freeing.
That's good.
mhm,
I want to take a little bit to talk about the path that you two have together worked
Mm.
out to help others who may be caught in something similar or some variety of brokenness and sexual addiction and betray, just all of this stuff.
mhm,
Awaken recovery.
Yeah.
Um, I love, first of all, how you say, and I found this in something that you had written, that sexual addiction is an intimacy disorder. It's about
mhm,
much more than acts, although acts have consequences,
Yeah.
that when you get deeper and look at the matters of the heart, you use the phrase intimacy disorder, which rings my bell. I love that. Those who have been listening to my podcast for a while know that's what I love to talk about. First of all, let me just have you speak to that and then outline Awaken Recovery. You have tools to help people, whether they're
Hmm.
married or not, but even in
mhm,
their marriage, to deal with these things.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't come up with the concept that sexual addiction is an intimacy disorder. I mean, I think we can probably thank Pat Carnes as much as anybody for
mhm,
that, you know, going all the way back to the 80s when he kind of blazed the trail for anybody who is doing work in sexual addiction, particularly with from a faith perspective. But it really resonated with me because if I believe that sex is my greatest need, then that means that I'm going to die without it, but if I
mhm,
have it, then I'm going to be perfectly okay. And I, on both sides of that coin, found that that premise doesn't work. because if sex is a want, if it's a desire, but I can be okay without it, then I can have the proper relationship with it. And so just recognizing that what I think I'm looking for in the search for the sexual experience or the sexual partner or whatever it is, under like, why did I still feel empty after I got those things?
Yes.
Because I wasn't looking for the next great orgasm, right? That it was much, much more than that. I was looking for the deep connection that God created for the two of us to have, so that out of that we could connect sexually and celebrate the already existing intimacy. So if sex is coming out of intimacy that's already there, it's beautiful, it's undistracted, it's shame-free, guilt-free. And I don't think that anybody experiences that 100%,
Right.
because I don't think any of us make it to the marriage relationship without our sexuality and our sexual experience having been distorted to some degree, because we have an enemy. We have an enemy who hates us and wants us to be knocked off kilter. And so early exposure to porn, sexual abuse, early sexual experimentation, all of those things, whatever is in our story, we experienced it wrong before we had the chance to experience it right. And a lot of people, through no fault of their own, it wasn't even their choice, but it can be redeemed. And that's the thing, is now that we know how to identify intimacy and to define it correctly, and that sex is a part of it, but it's not a requirement to have intimacy, and that my wife is not the only one with whom I'm supposed to be intimate. When we take intimacy and sex and make them no longer mean exactly the same thing, that's freeing. As a former worship pastor, I never liked it when people would equate music and worship. They'd say, well, how was the worship today? Oh, great. I loved all the songs. It's like, that's a cheapening of the experience of worship, and it's putting way too much pressure on music. Same thing with intimacy and sex. If all that intimacy is sex, then that is really insulting to all of the forms of non-sexual intimacy that I can experience with all kinds of people in my life and need to, in order to be able to show up healthy in relationship with my wife. And it just puts too much pressure on what sex is supposed to be. So yeah, discovering that what I really needed was to figure out how to experience intimacy, which required vulnerability, which I was always terrified of. Into me see is the common, play on that word that people use for intimacy. That means that I open myself up knowing full well that you could misuse that vulnerability, but it's worth the risk. And we started to not only think of that as a concept, but to experience what that really felt like. And that's what we've been doing now for almost the past 17 years. Not perfectly.
Let me, but before you get into the four S's in Awaken Recovery, I just want to muse Stacey for a minute also about what learning about intimacy meant, because I am sure, based on the just allusions you two have made and things I've heard from other couples, that when your world blows up and this comes to light with Greg, the push-pull, I want you, I don't want you, and what in the world can intimacy ever be? What have we had? And we thought it was, and it wasn't, and now having to just learn something that you thought you knew, but you really didn't, and where does sex fit into all of that? That can be a big load.
Yeah, it was a lot. So, being a missionary kid, growing up in Africa, so many people grew up in the church. It was all just, don't have sex until you get married. Don't have sex until you get married. Don't have sex until you get married. And it was like, okay. And then I guess it'll be what everything is supposed to be. And we barely made it across the line with saying we didn't do one of the things that you're not supposed to do. But
we did everything except intercourse.
And
we were purity culture technical virgins.
Yep. You're not alone in that. Yep.
And I had never had a boyfriend. He was my first boyfriend. He was the first guy that I dated and first guy that I kissed. And And my body just really liked all the things. And I was very excited myself to get married. So finally we can just stop feeling guilty when we go further than we want to. Because there was a lot of that. I cried every time. I was like, oh my gosh, we're not supposed to do this. And we pray and we're like, let's not do that again. And we do it again. So when we get married, it's going to be amazing. We got married and it was not amazing. I did not have anybody to talk to about it before we got married, and then getting married and all of that. I mean, in my mind, I had no idea what my friends who were getting married were experiencing, but I would talk about it. And so for me, I think it was guilt and shame, and it isn't good for me because I did all that. Like I did all that disobeying before, therefore I'm being punished for that. And so it was kind of terrible for the next 17 years. I mean, we had 3 kids, so, you know, something worked, but it just was not a good experience for me. And I just did not ever have anywhere to go with that, or I didn't think I did. And so when this all comes out, for me, I'm thinking, well, of course he did all this because you always rolled your eyes and never wanted to have sex and all that, because, you know, that's what we think. And then I would get to talking to other women in the same place as me, and they loved sex and they had all the sex and they never turned their husband down. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. So then I'm learning about how it's not about sex and all of that. Right. Of course, when our therapist said that, I was like, what? Well, I cussed at her. It's not about sex. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. She's like, well, it's not about you. It's not about you. He didn't do it because of things that were lacking in you. Right. But it has impacted you. And I was like, okay, I can take that. But I think for me, it's been a lot of years of recovery, learning, navigating this. It did not get amazing because now everything's out in the open. And even as we've been healing, and I am not scared to be with him, or I'm really not thinking much at all about what he did. It's just been hard. It's just been hard. I think those messages that were in my formative years of it's got to look this certain way and saying no.
Yep.
That's been part of it, is like, if he asks, I can say no, but then I don't want to because way back there, well, what if? And I'm like, but for 17 years, he did all the things and you did have sex and it didn't fix it. So, you know, I think we've done a couple abstinence periods for me to just not have that on the table and and there's no pressure.
Yes.
And that was hard because that made me mad. And then I wanted to have sex because I couldn't have sex. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? You know, but it was really good. And you even I said one week into one of them, I was like, I think one of the reasons I felt like we didn't have a lot of sex, but it felt like that's all we did is talk about sex. And I didn't know if that was accurate. So we went on this fast. And a weekend, I said, I think one of the things that I've realized is when you come up to me, you're not touching me sexually because that's the rules. And I think you did that a lot, just copping a feel here and there. And it's okay, we're married, but it made me feel like an object.
There was so much discovery that happened.
And you realized the same thing. Yeah. And also that, like, when you went to unload the dishwasher or help, you say how.
Well, just knowing that I'm not going to get anything out of this. I noticed my motivation plummeting. Like, golly, am I really that self-centered? And the answer is yes and no. I mean, not intentionally, but just internally, there's kind of this quid pro quo, and it just sort of develops subconsciously. Well, maybe if she comes home and I've straightened up the kitchen and I've unloaded the dishwasher, well, you know,
look, all this, don't I?
Right. And
done it.
But also, let me just say too, we didn't just come up with that. There's a lot of really well-meaning but ill-informed religious teaching that has said exactly that, that has championed that, and it makes sex transactional. And it's not supposed to be transactional.
Yeah. I would also have it so that I knew, like, if we were going to do, and I wasn't lying about it, but like if we did a bunch of stuff around the house or we need to do a lot of projects, I love to do projects with Greg. He is not so joyful about it, but you do it. But I thought, well, if we do that first, he won't be irritated. He'll enjoy it more.
And again,
you know,
transactional.
That's transactional, you know, so we talk about it a lot.
Good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, a word to the wise, to any married person, talk about it.
Talk about it.
Talk
Yes.
about it.
Yes. It's so, he says that to when we're coaching with couples. He's like, we talk about it a whole lot more than we do it because there's just so much.
Yeah.
And I get in my head and I have so much in my head. And he's like, man, the story's in your head. And I'm like, I know.
And I
So,
know
So,
I'm
yeah.
mindful of the fact that before you had asked about Awaken
Mhm.
and kind of how our experience had translated into that community. And really what it was people that we met in those early days, weeks, months, couple of years of recovery who had walked it before we did,
Mhm. Mhm.
just gave us so much hope that this path that we were on was going in the right direction. I
Yeah.
mean, we couldn't see with clarity what it was going to look like 5 years from now, but we knew that we were moving in the right direction. And sometimes that's enough because all the stuff we've been talking about just in the last 10 minutes about the intricacies of what we've gotten in touch with in our sex life and how that's like a 401 level course, right? But when you first hit recovery, you're maybe not even 101. You might be in the remedial course and you just need somebody to say, you're in the right place, you're asking the right questions, and to have a community, to have a place to land and say, I don't know what the heck is going on. I just need to be around other people who have been through it.
mhm.
That's a cup of cold water. And we had both experienced that. And we knew that we wanted to provide it to other people. I went through a transition from wanting to get back into church ministry to where God rerouted that into wanting to take what we had learned and discovered and grown from and healed through this process of recovery and just be able to offer it to other people more clearly and more accessibly than what we had.
Yes.
Because, 16 years ago, there wasn't very much going on
Yep.
Mhm.
for Christians who are recovering from sexual addiction and betrayal trauma. Now it's like a wealth,
Mhm.
it's like you're in the middle of a lake where we felt like we were in the middle of a desert
Yes.
before.
Mhm.
And we need more still. I mean, we continue to meet people like you who are doing this kind of work. It's like more and more and more,
Mhm.
because there's never going to be enough people focusing on this, but there's so much more than there used to be. And so with Awaken, what we just want to do is provide that place for people to start their journey. And then on that journey to have companions with them.
Yes.
We don't do their therapy and we don't do the spiritual leadership because there are counselors and church leaders for that. But we provide the community. And the community is often a missing piece. And so we've worked really hard to build both an in-person in a lot of places and an online recovery meeting community that people can take advantage of no matter where they live. But then on top of that, doing some of the partnering with church leaders and therapists to provide resources like our Roots Retreat, Men's Recovery Intensive, and Women's Workshop. That's a good kind of jump start or turbo boost for people who are maybe just starting a process or needing a little bit of extra help. We do something called ministry cohorts where we do almost like continuing ed for church leaders to help them understand addiction, recovery, trauma, so that they can shepherd more effectively and do that role that God has called them to with more confidence and grace. And so we just want to be able to help people who are in the space do their roles of serving and helping people more effectively and more confidently, just to be a help if we can.
That's awesome. I love that you focus on community. In the season that I have been talking with people and working with people in some of these areas, I have yet, now, I haven't talked to every person in the world, but from every single person I have talked to, I have yet to meet one person who struggled with a long-term sexual addiction or related kind of challenge, who found long-term healing and freedom on their own. Yes,
Mhm.
Right.
pray more deeply, fall on your face, seek. You need that, and God designed us to grow in healing community. And if you don't have people around you, I don't think you're going to make it. And I
Mhm.
love that you guys are making something like that available because it's
Well,
so critical.
to
Mhm.
the point that
Mhm.
you just made, Carol, First John 1:9 says that if we confess our sins, that God is faithful and just to forgive our sins. So we confess to God, we get forgiveness. But then in James 5, it says, confess your sins to one another so that you may be healed.
Yes.
And we need both. We need forgiveness and
Yes.
we need healing. And God is the one who does both. But the Bible tells us that the way that we receive his healing is through corporate confession, through other people knowing our stories. In Hebrews, the writer says, encourage one another daily as long as it's called a day, so that what? So that none of you are hardened by sin's deceitfulness.
Yes.
When we're trying to fix this in isolation, we don't even know that we're going off of the right information. We probably aren't, because we've been believing lies. And it's not until somebody else knows our story that we can really get the help that we need. And so, yeah, God has got this brilliant plan behind it all that involves, yes, prayer, yes, reading the Bible, and yes, seeking to obey what he tells us, but we work that out in community.
Yes.
And we've got to have people that we know are with us and walking beside us. We need to know what it feels like to have somebody know the worst things about us and say, I still want to be in your life, and I still want you to be in my life, because we don't believe that's what would happen until it happens.
Yeah. And I wanted to say something about this isn't necessarily confessing your sins, but just having this story, that looks very different for a lot of people who have families, like children. And I get that, question all the time. Like, I don't know what to tell my kids or whatever. Do I tell my kids? And, ours were 14, 10, and 7 when this all blew up. He was on staff. We weren't, he got fired. So we're going to have to go somewhere else. We had to address it. And I would say to anybody that listens to this and they find themselves in that place, I don't know the degree that you tell details. I can't determine that for everybody, but I will say that I believe the best gift is for our children to know that we have struggled, and not details, but it could be with pornography, because there's our kids, especially the kids growing up now, they've been exposed to so much. And, if we can share that this has been something we've walked through. And I know one of our kids said, just watching you walk through this with dad, I'm like, I'm not terrified. I don't want that to ever happen in my marriage, but like, I'm not terrified of it. And I know God can heal. And so, I just think, and our kids know more than, because over the years, as they've gotten older, we've talked about stuff and told them you can ask questions. But I just think it's a gift. If we find ourselves like, well, they'll never see their dad the same, or he's their hero and they don't need, I'm like, that is not the gospel to me.
It can be idolatry.
Yeah. And what a better way to like teach them how much we need Jesus. And so, and I know, because I want to be that mom that looks good and amazing and whatever. Well, that ship has sailed. So I'm just going to be me and, hopefully point them to Jesus. So that, for whatever that's worth, I just think, of course, I'm not talking about telling all the details and broadcasting it. Ours is public. We have a ministry and that's different, but to whatever degree you can be broken with your kids and let them know. And if you're sad or crying, you know what, I'm very sad, but I'm getting help.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Stacey. Thank you for saying that. And I think I would say the same. Be thoughtful about details, but absolutely. And just neurobiologically, for kids to see their parents go through something and make it, or whatever happens with the marriage or whatever. And I think this is probably true in their view of both of you. Okay, I don't want to mess up, but if I ever do mess up, Dad showed me God is there. My parents' marriage survived. My mom doesn't have the same internal messages dictating her day-to-day responses as she did. They have become different people, and that's an unconscious message to your kids that words will never say. That becomes an embodied memory that I lived through this, and I have seen my parents become who God needed them to become, and I know what that process is like. Anyway, I just had to go there for a second. That's really good.
Amazing. Well, one of our kids said at some point in this process, she was like, this is the dad I remember. Like she didn't know all this was going on, but she saw the harshness. And
The
then,
one who was 14 when it blew up, because she was old enough to have remembered how I was before it got really, really dark. And
Yeah.
that was really, it cut, kind of cut to my heart that I had changed so much, but it was beautiful to see. Excuse me. It was beautiful to see her seeing things getting better.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we've touched about 10% of what we could talk about. We are definitely going to have show notes to Awaken Recovery, to What We Really Want, your podcast.
Yeah, we can get into the remaining 90 when we have you on our show.
Well, I will be looking forward to that. But I definitely want to share that with our audience too, and the good work that you do. Just many, many blessings. This has nourished my heart, just having this conversation. And I am just so grateful for who you are, both of you, who you are, and the work that you are doing, and then being with us here today.
Thank you so much for letting us share and being real and honest.
Yeah, it's a blessing for us, and it's just been a real treat to get to meet you, and looking forward to continuing to know you down the road.
Absolutely. Ditto, ditto. Well, blessings to both of you.
Thank you. You too.
Check the links. Check out what Greg and Stacey offer at Awaken Recovery. Check out their podcast, What We Really Want. Some really good stuff there. Their communities. One of my deeply felt passions and beliefs, and you may have heard this near the end of this conversation, is that people need to connect with others if they are walking through some of this brokenness. An intimacy disorder must find healing in community. So check that out. I also want to tell you again about our intensives at Dr. Carroll Ministries. In a small group setting, in a beautiful location here in Central Texas, we have programs for women, and now we've just started programs for men also. Check the links under this video or wherever you're getting this material. And if you are struggling with anything in this area, these intensives can help open up the places in your heart that have been covered over, help you face the realities of your story in a safe and healing setting, help you experience Jesus coming right into the middle of that and working out, okay, what are the next steps? I would be delighted to answer your questions if you are considering coming to an intensive. Reach out. I'd love to hear from you in any way, whether it's a comment under this video or come over to the contact page at our website, drcarrollministries.com. That contact page is confidential and it comes right to me. Thank you again for being part of this episode with me. And until next time, God bless you.